Good morning. Great to see you. Welcome to the Connect Theatre. I hope you guys are surviving better than I am so far. We're just one day into the conference, and by the time I got back to the hotel last night, I was completely done in. So I hope you've got more staying power than I have. Anyway, it's great to be with you and great to have some good friends on stage with us that I'm going to introduce to you in just a couple of minutes' time. But what I wanted to do is just give you a little taster of where I've come from, a little bit about what Appear is doing, and then also just one or two headlines on the technology direction that we're observing in the industry. So this is the title of our presentation. I've been the CTO of Appear it's my 6-month anniversary this week. So very exciting to be part of the Appear team, and you can go and check us out on the hall further down. I'd love to see you there, and I'll put the details of the booth up at the end of the session. Oh no, it's even here. So my background is I spent 22 years working in telco land, in service provider land. So that was where I cut my teeth. On the broadcast side of service provider land, I jumped to the dark side of vendor land in 2010 and was with Nevion for many years. And then last year, I was very excited to join Appear. So that's my history and heritage in the industry. It's been quite a while, and it's very exciting to see the continual technology evolution. I'd just like to also give a plug. Those of you that don't know me, I'm very passionate about cups of tea. And when I say tea over here, I mean like proper hot stuff made with boiling water and black tea leaves. And anyway, I do a podcast with Appear called Time for Tea. So if you want to check that out on Spotify or any other podcasting platform, do subscribe. We're going to be doing recording another one towards the end of the show here, which will go out probably next week at some point. So do check that out and subscribe. That would be great. So a few just quick trends that I'm observing from where I'm sitting in the industry that I think are driving a lot of what we're doing. It's driving a lot of the technology that we're developing in Appear, but it's also driving the way things are done. And there are some real plus points. So the first main thing, which is our main focus here, is live production is now distributed. What I mean by that is the traditional model for creating programming was that traditional one at the top, where, in case you can't see the icons from where you're sitting, the acquisition on the left, the processing and storage in the center, and the control on the right used to be co-located. You know, you had a studio or an OB truck, everything was co-located, and that's how we did programming. What we have seen is the emergence of many other different models. This diagram comes courtesy of the DPP, and we actually developed this about 4 years ago now. As during the first lockdown, I believe, we had the brainstorms and there are models. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just an example of the different ways people are doing production. Why are we doing this? Why are we transforming the workflow? Well, first of all, the IP connectivity that we have both in facility and between facility gives us the flexibility to actually have different stuff and different people in different places. That's really transformational to workflow from a business perspective as well as an operational perspective. It means you can make better use of your people. It means you can make better use of your equipment. And it also, from a sustainability and environmental perspective, is actually really positive as well. So all of those reasons these different models are actually all valid and very usable in different ways. And I'd love to share with you more about that and talk to you more about that offline if you'd like to follow that up. So that's the trend of the industry that's driving that. Another really big industry trend, which is important, I think, just ahead of our discussion, is we are moving from the bespoke to the generic in terms of the way we do live production in broadcast. What do I mean by that? Everything from the connectorization. We have loved our BNC connectors and our XLR connectors for the last few decades, and we're still using quite a bit of that, but more and more we're moving towards an Ethernet interface. So we're abstracting ourselves. We're getting further away from broadcast connectorization and moving towards standard IT connectivity. Also, we're actually tending to move our functionality from bespoke appliances into more of a software-based infrastructure. That's a trend of the industry, and it's a trend we're following in Appear as well. But also, that software that you're running may not even be running in your facility. It might be running in somebody else's facility somewhere else in the world. And that's the dematerialization piece there. Another thing we're observing, which was almost unheard of even 10 years ago, is we're tending to use public internet connectivity as parts of the live production chain. And that is something that's really transformational. And there are technology enablers, both from the ISPs and from the equipment that we deploy to do that are actually making that a reality. But that's something else that we're seeing. And again, from what we're seeing of the marketplace where we sit, there is a big demand for the equipment that actually facilitates that. Another thing is, and I know this is going to come up in discussion with my colleagues and friends that are sitting down here, is time and latency is really, really important. And we're seeing that as very, very critical, even more so as we move into this distributed production industry where different things are located in different places. Anyway, that's enough of the, if you like, of the headlines I wanted to talk to you about. I would like to introduce, well, actually I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. Our two panelists, they're two friends of peers that we've been working with for the last couple of years in the US, and they are both doing different things in different parts of the US. So first of all, Eric, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're based, who you work for, roughly what you do, and most importantly, what's your favorite ice cream?
I think the ice cream one is going to be the hardest thing to answer. I thought about that all night after you asked me that was going to be the question. My name is Eric Gerard. I work at FanDuel in Los Angeles. I'm a director of engineering for our media and entertainment products. So FanDuel is a technology company that offers online sportsbook, online casino, all sorts of other types of technologies that we're trying to put in front of customers. We're really leading into this idea that we just want to entertain the pants off of you, right? So we have a television network, we have a FAST channel, we have online OTT offerings, and what we're really striving for is building what we're calling a interactive watch and wager experience. So we partner with companies like Sinclair to get their feeds into our building, and we create unique experiences that are related to sports betting, but then also just put a game in front of somebody if they want to watch and, play along.
Thank you very much. I'd like to actually apologize for your picture on the screen. I grabbed it from your LinkedIn profile.
I was trying to be too hipster. I apologize on LinkedIn. Or giving you like a proper headshot. Coffee ice cream.
Coffee ice cream.
Yeah.
Very good. I was going to ask you. Okay, Wally, introduce yourself and the ice cream thing.
As I said, I think the ice cream is going to be the hard one. I'll start with the ice cream.
Okay. You've had 24 hours to actually work this out. No, you've actually had about 72 hours to think this.
But I went last night and tried several of them. So pistachio. Pistachio actually would be a good one, yeah. And for the introduction, yeah, I'm working for Sinclair. I'm in charge of the playout and the distribution piece of the house. So a few years back, we started our journey of moving a number of our stations to the cloud. So as of today, we started deploying last year. And in a year, we deployed about 55 channels, moving all the distribution to the cloud. So when I say distribution, the process started with a whole refound of the architecture, how we receive the asset, how we receive the live feeds, how we're going to manage them, and actually at the distribution side. So that's the ongoing process that we've been doing. Live production is part of it, graphics, and everything that makes the broadcast channel actually a broadcast channel. So we've been into this journey that started a couple of years ago when we started actually the architecture. We started deploying like last year, and we still have a couple of years to go so we can move the 150 channels that we have all to the cloud.
Great. And you didn't ask me, but I'm just going to tell you anyway. I do actually really like vanilla ice cream because it's compatibility range. But actually the two I'm probably most interested in is salted caramel or ginger.
Ginger?
Yeah? Have you ever tried? No. Anyway, that's it for ice cream, folks. I was also going to say we're aiming to have 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. So when we hold your questions. So that's only about 15 minutes away. So hold your questions and we'll get you to put your hands up. And I've got a gentleman with a radio mic that's going to come running if you actually got any questions. Think of some hard ones for these gentlemen. Eric, so let's go back to, can you give us an overview of your workflow kind of the technology chain in your system and identify some of the parameters of that workflow and that tech chain that are really important to you.
Absolutely. So I'll talk specifically to our media and entertainment products. So we have linear television networks that hit, all of your cable and MSO, MVPD, DMVPD providers, and then also OTT offerings. So if you think backwards from that, what we're really doing is we're acquiring signals from events, venues, specifically, whether they're a horse track, a ballpark, really anywhere in the world. So we deploy our own production. Sometimes we roll our own trucks, or we utilize third-party signal acquisition providers to be able to bring these feeds into our LA facility and then also into the cloud. So where we bring them into the cloud, we can have our OTT offerings direct from on site. But then also when we bring them into our facility, what we're really doing is we're creating a red zone experience, mostly for horse racing. But we started to get into international sports with darts and international basketball and all sorts of other really cool and interesting sports. What we're then doing is we're pushing these through our signal chains and adding graphics that are relevant to our sports bettors to be able to then play along in real time with our sports book. So I know in a minute we're going to get into latency, and how we've been able to work with Sinclair is to bypass some of their master control chains and some of their OTT chains where all of this latency is being introduced and acquire it directly from the truck to incorporate that into our live TV production. So I work from glass to glass, and that's atypical in a broadcast industry, right? And we do this with a very lean and mean team. So we're heavily reliant on third-party partners, but also technology that can consolidate a large volume of signals into a very small form factor. I don't have the luxury of having large real estate presence. So what I'm looking to do is have, 40, 50, 60 encodes, decodes in a 3RU form factor to be able to kind of process and do whatever I need to. Also, something that's very interesting is that we take in these signals from all over the world. So it's not just US-based standards, right? So we have to have interoperability with, signals that originate in 25 frames or 50 frames and all sorts of hodgepodge of formats. And we're looking for technology that can be compatible and basically be broadcast in the United States on a OTT product and on a virtual sports book, as well as, get into your home on, wherever you are. And that's our idea, is to meet the customer where they're at, right? You don't necessarily need to be into a FanDuel O&O product to be able to consume FanDuel media products. So that's ultimately where we're going. We have distribution chains and the whole thing, but at this point, we're just talking about the history of TV and everything that's involved in TV, right? Because that's what we're up to.
Yeah. And just one quick clarification on that. When you say you're taking content from elsewhere in the world, do you do that long lining yourself, or do you actually get somebody else to bring that to you?
So it depends. So our cloud partners with AWS, the FanDuel Sportsbook is built on AWS. So if we're originating a signal from, let's say, France, right? What we'll do is we'll build infrastructure in AWS to backhaul that over to AWS backbone and then bring it into our LA facility over direct connects. So sometimes we are doing in building these meet me rooms. We do public internet contribution with SRT and Zixi and some of these other formats, but heavily reliant on third-party signal acquisition providers. The two that we mainly use today are RCN and LTN.
Okay, cool. Right, well, Lee, can you give us a similar succinct overview of your tech chain and the key components that you've got?
Yeah, actually, what the funny part with Eric is it's different use cases, different business models, but we're coming from two different backgrounds. But actually, we end up doing something similar, which is for us, for Sinclair, we have multiple stations all across the US. What we're doing is we say, instead of having those silos sitting on every single station, we're trying to merge them all together. Something that might like common sense today for the stations, if all the stations are airing Big Bang Theory episode 6, every single station receive an episode, QC it, validate it, make sure that it's proper to air. What we're doing before even talking about the live feed, which is similar, is getting a centralized place. That's one media ingest, one form factor, one format, and then there's going to be QC'd once and being delivered to everyone. So that when you understand the logic for one episode, you say, yeah, that makes sense. We're trying to do the similar thing when it comes actually to live feeds. The CW network, for example, or any network, some of them are national. Why do I need to have every single station receive their own feed? What we're doing on the cloud is we're centralizing everything. The feed is available, and when it's there, it's available for everyone to use. You have to manage your redundancy, manage backup, etc. But you're only doing the job once. So that's when you see it now, it sounds like common sense, but that's how the journey started. We say we don't need to do stuff 60 times. We try to do it once, do it one times really good, and actually everyone can take advantage of it. So when actually Eric was talking about like the latency and the timing, when I come next to, it's actually exactly the same thing. When you're taking the feed, you need to be everyone to use it with the right timing. And that's where we're trying to go. Centralizing it for asset and for the live, that's actually what we're doing now. And surprisingly enough, it's been working. And that's why we have actually station on air working on the day to day.
Cool. Okay. So we've headlined timing and latency as potentially an issue or something that we're concerned about. So, I guess there's an obvious answer to the question, A, why is it so important to you? And B, what are you doing? What's your targets? Have you got any numbers you can share on how you have optimized things or how you want to optimize things? And what level of criticality are we talking about in that whole chain?
Yeah, so at FanDuel, our number one customer complaint is I tried to play along with what's happening on screen and I wasn't able to because it had already happened, right? So latency is my problem statement right now within the broadcast industry. It's great that, companies, they put these things through OTT distribution chains and that introduce just-in-time packaging and all of this latency. Well, it just doesn't work for me, right? So I've been experimenting, with reducing that latency for as low as my sports book will allow me to do it. And the reason why I have to do it is because of regulatory action, right? So I can get my latency down from glass from the time it happens in venue to the customer screen. My speed limit is 9 seconds right now. That will reduce as we look to meet the market makers where they're at. So I'm looking to get the data from when the market is made, the millisecond it's made, and then inject that in the form of graphical data into my linear streams. So I've been playing around with WebRTC technology and RTP and all of these different, acquisition and distribution protocols. The lowest I've been able to get my latency for my video is down to about 250 milliseconds glass to glass right now with WebRTC. So we've partnered with companies like Dolby.io. We've partnered with you to be able to, do some RTP things, direct from MLB through Sinclair through the RSN truck handoff. So I'm bypassing a lot of the traditional television mechanisms that exist today as far as distribution is concerned to create unique opportunities for my customers. And, like Waleed was saying, it's a different business case. We're not selling ads or we're not selling subscriptions. We're selling an experience, right? We want you to sit there and play along. So it's a completely different value proposition for our customers.
Yeah. Any latency requirements that you have within your chain, apart from the handoff to people such as this gentleman?
No, that's good. And we're selling ads, so it's different use case. But that's part of the architecture. When we design it on purpose to have multiple handoff points. And that's a critical piece because there's multiple business models. So when we talk about the handoff directly from a truck, that's actually one business model. And that's latency. You need latency for that. There is no discussion about it. For the other use cases, when you're doing production in the cloud, when you're doing actually distribution, having the right timing for us, it's more important than having the latency. Having an extra 500 milliseconds, having an extra second on the feed for the end users, I'm going to make a lot of enemies, but it will not matter as much as getting it right. So that's why for our timing, we're really strict on our timing, because when someone want to roll the brake, you want to roll that brake right there. You don't want to have 1 second from the previous ad, then you cut it off, you're showing your ad, and then you can have a lot of problems like on invoicing and how you can sell it, etc. So I always try to be careful when we talk about latency, is it all depends on the business model. Saying I want to have a low latency without explaining from where to where and why, you're going to try to change a lot of things and you might not end up with the result that you expected. That's why like what Eric was explaining is he has one use case, there is one target, and you can achieve it. For us, we have different use case, like when we're talking about the distribution in general, and I need the timing to be right. And we have multiple handoff from the stations. It's going back to our over-the-air distribution. It's going to our MVPD partners. It's going for if someone want to create a fast channel, and virtual MVPDs, all those feeds are going into different places. That's going to add latency down the road, but that's why I'm always trying to be careful. What latency are we talking about? From where to where, and what's your target and why?
Yeah. So I hear your glass-to-glass comments there, and your current kind of 9 seconds, whatever, is one of the things that obviously we've been doing within the Appear world is optimizing the latency of the elements within the live production chain. And one of the focuses I know we've had is trying to make those consistent, them low but consistent, because one of the feedbacks that I've had from the industry is, especially when you're doing remis, is that you need a consistency of latency. It's not just fast but variable. You need to have everything arriving anchored in, and you need to be able to absolutely rely on that. Any observations along that?
That's actually what I was trying to say. Like, when you think about the REMI, you can have an extra latency if needed to a degree.
Yeah.
But having it in time and having it on the perfect timing is more important than having it quicker.
Yeah.
That's actually the REMI use case. Is one of the perfect example when you said you can probably have a trade-off somewhere if you can have, I'm talking about milliseconds, like just for everyone, but in order to have it like timed correctly.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So we've talked about kind of what you're doing at the moment. So I'd like with a few minutes of your vision, where you're going, what tech you're looking to deploy, what you've already planned to deploy, but you can tell us about the near term, but also what your aspirations are, what you'd really like us to deliver you to be able to do stuff in the further future. So do you want to start, Eric, with what are your current plans and your future plans?
I've been thinking about ginger ice cream. So like that's my focus for the next 30 minutes, and go and try to find a ginger ice cream.
Well, if you find some, send me a WhatsApp. I'll join you.
Yeah, if Appear could build a soft serve machine, I think that's what we all want for our facilities right now, right?
Okay.
No, I was fortunate enough, to be invited by Appear and Andy to go to the customer council down in Miami. So I had a unique experience of meeting with other broadcasters and, the Appear team on some of the technologies that, other broadcasters, not just myself, are looking forward to. And I think what Andy had mentioned earlier with software-based solutions, I think that's what we're going to be leaning more into, right? It's great that I can have hardware appliances in my facility, but I need to be more agnostic to cloud, to be able to have a hybrid relationship, right, with my cloud infrastructure, especially because Sportsbook is such largely deployed there. So I need software-based solutions that run on cloud infrastructure, that centralize and manage all of my REMI productions and all of my REMI signals, because it's not just these fully switched feeds that are coming from racetracks. We do ISO cams. And if you think about, what the possibility of fantasy sports could be, if you got ISOs from every single NFL stadium, for example, I think that that's a very interesting use case. So how do you utilize an engineering and operations team effectively with a large volume of feeds that we're looking to acquire, I think is a very unique thing. Also, like HTML5 graphics, straight on the box, being able to offer, unique experiences straight off of, my acquisition pipelines, I think is really interesting. But then centralizing all of my distribution down to, what people are defining as single encode for multiple distribution points, kind of like what Waleed was saying, right? Again, ops and engineering need simplified ways to get signals to all of the different destinations that they need to land on. And then it needs to be done sometimes, in especially my use case, with one team.
Very good. You, sir?
For us, in terms of partners in general, what I would like to say is like, we're happy to share what we're doing, because we don't think we're the smartest guy on earth. If we share ideas and we share architecture with other people, we do it with partners, we do it with vendors, we do it with other actually companies. We share in order to get better. We're starting to move everything on the cloud. We tried for a year. We improve already a lot based on the exchange that we're having from other customers. We're talking about doing the graphics on the cloud. We're talking about removing all the unnecessary steps. If your channel is being created on the cloud, it should not leave the cloud unless it's for a final delivery. So all those hopes going from point A to point B, because this piece of, let's call it ES, let's call it weather channel, something that's missing on the cloud, that's the piece for the next 6 months. That's the piece that we're chasing. So we do an end-to-end full broadcast channel ready to air directly from the cloud. So whatever is leaving the cloud is good. It's literally ready to air. And that's why we're talking to partners. We're always asking for feedbacks. Here's how we think we're going to solve it. There's a lot of standards, but there's also a lot of ways that has not been standardized just because multiple partners, multiple vendors are doing things differently. So my hope is we share more so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And every time my question to the vendors, when we have this discussion and multiple times is, am I the only one asking for this? Because if the answer is yes, either I'm a genius or I'm doing something wrong. I go with the latter. So I think that's something that we want to make sure that we do more and more. And I encourage everyone just to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would appeal to everyone, both our current customers and our future customers, that, we're always really keen to learn where people are wanting to go, because that's how we actually input our roadmap. That's how we actually direct what we're doing. Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. I did promise a little slot for questions. So does anyone have a burning question? The gentleman with the hat on at the back is got a radio mic. We do have one question on the side there.
Hey, Waleed. Question for you regarding content in the cloud. In the past, in between our interaction, it's always been a concern to have security of that content. And usually there are contracts between distributors and content providers that effectively prevent the ability to have content in the cloud outside of a private cloud that's wholly in control of a distributor's environment. Do you feel that that environment is changing such that there's no longer the need, or that security is there in like an AWS type of environment that would no longer be held to those constraints from the past?
Yeah, Joel, it depends on the content itself. Some of the content, and we're talking about people that deliver the content, the distributors, they already have like S3 package delivery. They can deliver it cloud to cloud. And for the benefit of us, I was explaining before, instead of having 60 copies going to 60 different storage, now we only have one location. So instead of having 60 medium, I would call it security around multiple sites, you can focus on doing like one times. It's only going from here to here and no one else is touching it. So we've been having those discussions for syndicated contents, for commercials, for promos, etc. And actually it's almost case by case. And some of the content will allow us to do. Some of the other discussion is still ongoing discussion where it's almost we have to prove our case and say, this is more secure than, and don't quote me on this, than actually a NAS where the password is admin sitting somewhere. And actually that we had to prove our case multiple times to drive the discussions.
Great, thank you. We've got time for one more question. Anybody else got a clarification at all that they would like, or an observation? Wonderful. There we go, one more.
So I'm curious about the newer broadcasting standards that are coming out for immersive technologies and how that might affect, the distribution platforms and things like advertising, and how you would sort of, evolve this immersive video world that's starting to come forward.
Wow, that's a big question for 1 minute. Do you have a comment, or I can give a quick comment?
Yeah, so Waleed and actually we were talking about this when we were syncing before this, and I think what you're looking to do is, offer like these very low latency distribution types for OTT and web and desktop and mobile platforms, but with client side interactions, right? Whether your dev teams are building these out natively or you're using HTML5 graphics to drive the interactivity, especially at FanDuel, that we're looking for. I'm not sure about Sinclair, how they're looking to do this, but specifically what we're doing is marching towards a real-time, interactive watch and wager experience for our customers. So where you can watch any game, anytime, and play along with it and have a great time.
And just to answer on the standards, like for the ATC3, for example, the AC4 with Atmos is part of the standard. And there is actually other immersive protocols that we're working also at the standard level to keep adding them at the standard piece. But here already, like just with the Atmos or other, even MPEG, they have the immersive audio. Talk about the audio piece. That's something that's being added, and that's something that we're looking at. That being said, it's always better when it's coming with immersive audio from the source and not us receiving it and trying to reinvent something that doesn't exist.
And one complimentary comment there, I think one observation from the whole personalization from the end user experience, that's enabled by this workflow change to Remy is the fact that when we're pulling all of the ISOs, all of the feeds back, then that actually gives the opportunity, because all of that content is then available. So the monetization of that content in different ways by personalization can actually be enacted then, because you've got all those feeds available. It's very different from a traditional production. Time is up. I would like you to join me with thanking my friends here, Eric and Waleed, for their time and the discussion today. We would love to talk to you more about what we're doing. We're literally 90 seconds walk along this carpet. It's a pink logo. You can't miss it. 21:30. We would love to talk to you. But we'll hang around. I'm sure these gentlemen will be happy to take questions afterwards as well. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Please join me in thanking Eric and Waleed. And thank you for joining us this morning. We hope to see you again. Thank you very much.